for you. I guess I have another game here for you. This is one I played a little bit ago, and we'll see if there's anything here to learn. All right, let's see if this one started. Okay, this one we have Caffeine. He's a new player to the game, and he's definitely picking it up quickly. Illiterate. He's one of the regulars. I remember that one. That guy here's on the elites. Stargel is on the Covenant Navy. Looks like he's getting the tutorial there. And I'm here on Brutes. And then we have Antari Strike? That's a new name to me. I apologize if I mispronounced it. But it's good to see you out here. We would love to see you in the Discord and get to know you a little bit. Alright. So that guy's opening on Shang Hughes. This was the old school opening. Still used. Some players have started favoring High Charity because there are natural defenses. You get the free cannons there. Plus there's the ramp. So it's something you can try to use to defend. It's not quite like what we have on Reach. Reach has significantly more defenses to play with, but it's something. And I mean, you still have the AA there. Plus, you can spend a little bit of your starting money on that if you so chose. Although usually it's better to try to use it some other ways. All right, let's zoom out a little bit here. Take a look at. Let's see what's going on here. Caffeine. So Illiterate. Oh, I missed all that early fight. That was important. It wasn't too important, but I'll back it up real quick. Okay. So right here, you see he's setting up these snipers here on the high ground. It's not a bad move. It's meant to try to hold it. However, this is where the grunts play in. See, so normally if those were units running up there, like a jackal, would take them out. But the grunts can just take all those very slow, high-powered shots, and then because of their numbers, and then they close the distance and start taking them down. Which is kind of like the Halo game, or the Halo. And I mean, sniper rifles are really high-powered, but you're not going to take out a horde of grunts, like 30 grunts running at you fast enough with a sniper rifle, unless it did stack damage. Okay, so that's actually quite a bit of snipers. He might be able to start engaging, but he's waiting for the Kodiaks. Okay, good move, good move. That was pretty much the only point I wanted to back up for. All right, let's take a look. Navy is building super heavy cruisers. Super heavy cruisers aren't bad. Now right here, I was typing to someone in the chat, and they aggroed over and got themselves killed. But again, grunts are something that's expendable. You want to keep them alive, of course, but it's not like your hunters ran off and died. Okay, the Scarab's just about done here. That's my personal opinion. And now you know my playstyle. I should vary it up here every now and then. The way I usually play it, I like to get out the four factories, get out a Scarab, a horde of grunts, and then a mix of bio units. The grunts for the tanking. You want the locusts. Locusts are good to have in there. Really, a variety of everything works in most situations, because the locusts will start picking off things like the scorpions if they're running away, that's a bonus. But usually they're just there for picking off the Kodiaks, so that because they can engage the Kodiaks and will engage the Kodiaks, so that's all they can shoot are armored units. And so if there's nothing but scorpions and Kodiaks, usually the hunters will take care of them because they're up front, and then these ones can start picking out the back or help with the scorpions first. So it's a nice touch. Let's see how I react here, getting damage out of this. No, this one just forces him out of position, which was worth the glass. So okay, no, he got a fair number of. Oh no, he got some great damage there. That's right, because he went to engage, which was really great there. That was a great move by the Serengel. Even threatening 2 glass can be enough to give you an advantage like that. Because he's out of position, so I can engage the Kodiaks, and it worked out pretty well. Now, unfortunately, because his navy, well, he has some built some ships out here early, but you want to get it out there early to start getting that naval advantage. Now it looks like we're getting these. Okay. There we go. It looks like, so you see all the grunts there? Like those would have been more valuable units. The damage would have been going to harder to replace units. Put it that way. And maybe it sounds awful to put it that way, but it's the function in the way the games play. There we go. All right. And so you see how kind of the locust can really start getting tons of value for just picking off things, and then they can still do decent damage there to beam down some other things. Now see, there we go. Navy's here now. Now, generally, heavy cruisers right now, ever since the removal of AI heavy cruisers have kind of become, well, they're missing their, they don't have a really good role that they fill anymore in most metas. They're just kind of there. I mean, they can still beat some ships in some situations, but for the most part, they don't really have a place that they fit, or not one that I'm aware of. What he could do, since he's floating the money right here, he could just come over here and mac down the Scarab. However, Harvest is more or less lost at this point, so it wasn't a bad move to try to pull back here. Alright, so here's a pure Cyclops Elite build. This is definitely will get some damage done, as you can see. And he looks like he's down here getting some good damage, picking out the production, picking the buildings, and because Oni is brand new, he's not really going to be contested. Also, Army just got wiped, but he's doing a good job rebuilding here on Earth. That was good. Some players give up at this point, and well, it makes for a very short game. It turns into the Harvest game instead of the Halo game, but it's not that bad actually. So, all right, looks like we have a CSO and a CAS. Is that the fleet? That is the fleet. Wow, he's got another CSO on the way. That won't beat this build. Like these number of ships will win that, especially with if these are sort of your tanking now. Typically, you would trade out these UNSC heavy cruisers for just the normal cruisers. The reason being, so these have 4,000 health, right? So the normal cruisers are half the cost, roughly half the cost. And if you had any, they have about half the health. But they're a lot better to tank because you can get more of them. Their numbers are what offers them the value. And that's what matters most when the Covenant, because what the Covenant does, they have high single target damage weapons. So if they have to take it's the equivalent of dropping a nuke on an ant, right? I know that the explosion will be large, but it's if all that damage went into just that one ant, which is kind of how this works. So they dump all that damage into an ant when there are another 300 of them, and that one ant manages to, then allow all the other ones to get the more damage. And that a little bit of a clunky metaphor, but I think it conveys the idea. So when you're the UNSC, you want lots of smaller ships to start taking care of those larger numbers. Rather, lots of smaller ships to start absorbing that damage so that you can get more damage out into them. Now, you can adjust to that. BCs are pretty good at dealing with lots of smaller ships because of how fast they fire. So, just as an advice for that one. All right. So hunters are getting some damage done here, pushing in. And this one, it's kind of looking like it's going to be a little hard to recover. With the Spec Ops Elites here having taken this planet. Oh, who got a weapon upgrade? Ground upgrade? Probably space. Yeah, he got a space upgrade, yeah. Oh, wow. He got his upgrades. That's not a bad. Yeah. Having those upgrades will be great. Unfortunately, I don't think his fleet will be able to take that. Yeah, here another fleet was able to jump in here and do this, and this kind of shows, well, the the steamrolling nature of the Halo game. When a player starts getting damage and they just keep rolling it damage because their income isn't being stopped by it. It's not like they have to keep increasing their income. They can't, like they do in normal StarCraft, they can start getting significant damage while still macroing in the back. As long as they keep in mind to keep macroing, they can get some damage here. Like, for example, this is my starting army that took Harvest. I dropped it here. It took this planet. Meanwhile, Elise is already hitting this planet. And then I already had units producing, so I was able to hit the one outpost left needed to make the HQ vulnerable and still continue to get damage. Alright, looks like he went to orbit. Yeah, so again, switching out this one. They have a decent amount of health, but That poor army. It's not gonna make it. Yeah. That's actually that could have cleaned this up. Oh, that's why he left. I mean, it's very understandable. If you got your fleet just wiped while your HQ is vulnerable, yeah, that's not exactly pleasant to deal with. All right, looks like the lasers are beaming in here, and this is what I'm talking about here. If these were, you would have double the ships. You also want them to be in the front. As it is now, your damage dealer is taking the damage there. So you want those damage dealing ships in the back, and then the wow, stutters. I watched the King's Speech, now I stutter. Okay, you want the tanking, screening ships in the front, the ones meant to take all those hits in the front. Also, I would suggest mixing in carriers, specifically super carriers, because they can deal an insane amount of damage. Not only do they have really strong mat cannons, they have a really strong fighter complement, and their own screen. With that, they did pretty well. No, that worked pretty well. Now, this, of course, isn't unbeatable. The one player I've seen who can shut down my Brutes play is there's only one. It's Baron. He has this build where it's ODST, Spartan 3, Medic. And I think it's a build that could use a little bit of a nerf. But putting it out there, everyone's going to use it, and then it might mean a nerf. Or, out of that, people being forced to go up against it so often, they might actually come up with a counter. Kind of, we'll see which way it goes. And it's really strong because around the 10-minute mark, you just have a DPS ball that can just destroy even scarabs. Granted, I usually only have one scarab, but for example, I'll find a clip. I have plenty of games where he's used it against me. Even if I win an initial fight against an army on Harvest, he can jump into orbit and just jump them all in your face. When they're dropped pod or they're unloaded from a power, they get a buff that increases their health and damage and attack speed. Or health and attack speed, at least those two. With between that and everything else, they can just start to. And I'm not sure what combination of elements allows it to just suddenly melt scarabs, because scarabs are meant to be the hard counter, right? To have traditionally been the hard counter to ODSTs, Spartan 3s, and I guess the medics allow them to outlast a lot more damage than they should otherwise. But it becomes a bit of a worrisome because so you might win, you might trade a little bit out with your army. Even if you don't trade out with the army, he can just jump it all in your face and you're dead. Maybe you can mix it as a brute chieftains as an option, but the only way you can comfortably counter that is if you engage. I'm bringing up again. I mentioned it in the last game I cast, but there's the meta is a drop meta. You just load things up in a ship and drop them in their face. And some things get buffs from being dropped, but most of the time it's just that you're eliminating their ability to engage at range. That's for things like jackals, that's for things like wraiths. They like range because they can kite a little bit and keep pouring out the damage to someone who has to chase after them. You don't ever see that in Halo, backwards driving wraiths generally. Well, you do sometimes, but that's usually if the player is doing it. So, yes, wraiths are... it would be a great counter for brutes to use against that, but it's typically doesn't do very well if it's dropped in your face because now you don't have that option, and it's also pretty sudden. You can see it coming. You can try to go into a position where you can consider it to be safe, but it'll be a tricky build. So that's one build that I've seen that can. I haven't quite found a brutes composition yet, or seen one yet that can deal with it. I'd be interested to see if you can make one. Brutes chieftains theoretically would be a great counter because they can disrupt they have large amount of armor and they can disrupt the ball, but typically they just get deleted by the massive units. And again, you'd have to have it either maybe you could just have an EDS and try to load everything up really quick, and then just unload it as soon as the cooldown wears off. That would require you to have naval protection, and if you did have naval protection, then I don't know how they managed to land unless they cloaked on their way in. But yeah, the way to shut down any kind of drop build is just it comes down to navy, which makes it all the more important. Because more than whatever rural was currently, it's increased because if you can't shut down drops, you're in a lot of trouble. just because of how much they can spew out there, for the most part. So that was that one. I hope that was instructive, and if anything there you might have learned. And we'll hope maybe we can counter that build. There's a couple ideas we talked about with balancing, but I want to see if there's anything we can do currently to do it. I have been surprised at how often something already in the game, there's already something in place, unintentionally, that counters something that becomes very difficult. It's very, not that balance patches haven't been needed, but this game has by far one of the largest natural balances of any game I've seen. Which is like, oh, there's already a balance for that. Like, there's already a counter to that for a lot of things. Several mass banshees will show up every now and then. You're like, oh, we'll put up some turrets. That wasn't one. That wasn't a prime example, but there are also times you just run into like, oh, that already has a counter. So, anyways, hope you guys enjoyed that one, and I'll see you guys around.